Everyone. Oh, and welcome to our 5th webinar on collaborating to solve youth employment in Africa. My name is Lindsay Farrell, and I'm the Program Manager for Future Forward, a partnership between Ashoka and the MasterCard Foundation that is working to accelerate change around the issue. Today's event ends our 360-degree analysis of whose job is it to solve youth employment in Africa, a series of articles and webinars we have run in partnership with Fair Observer. Over the past several months, we've interrogated the context of youth employment in Africa, showing how African innovation supports youth livelihoods, how to improve job creation, how to redefine the meaning of work, and whose job is it to tackle youth employment. With this webinar, we hope to come up with concrete solutions that take our learnings and apply them to real-world contexts. As we have done in previous webinars, we invite you to engage in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag AfricaYouthFWD, as well as Soch and Chat. We'd love to hear your comments on questions that are being asked during the panel, and please feel free to ask questions too. We'll try to weave them into the conversation. Before we get started, we have an exciting announcement to tell you about. Just today, we are launching a Youth Innovations for Employment in Africa Challenge. Let me show you it. There. Young Africans between 18 and 30 who have an idea to solve employment are encouraged to present their ideas. On our website, www.changemakers.com/futureforward. The early entry deadline is October 15th. The deadline to submit all ideas is November 5th, and the winners will be announced on January 14th. The 5 top entrants will be eligible for prizes, including an all-expenses-paid trip to an Ashoka Globalizer Summit in South Africa in February, where they will be given support and visibility to grow their impact. Now I'd like to introduce you to our panelists for today's event. Can you each please introduce yourselves and tell us how you're making impact for youth in your communities? Regina?
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Regina Ajare. I'm a social entrepreneur from Ghana in West Africa. I run a program called Tech Needs Girls. It's a mentorship program where we teach young girls between the ages of 6 to 18 how to code and how to create technology. And they learn the skill not only to be able to create technology solutions for the problems they find in their communities, but as a skill that they can use to economically empower themselves. Because once they are done with the training, they get to do internships. And also, we're hoping to create like the next movement of female tech entrepreneurs. So I'm a software developer myself. I run a software company, and I started essentially with a laptop and a table. So I'm transferring the skill, which I feel is like a relevant 21st century skill, so that young girls can take advantage of the opportunities in today's digital age.
Great, thank you so much. South Africa, Marlon?
Hi everybody, the name is Marlon Parker, founder of an organization called R Labs. At the heart of what we do is really creating environments where we bring about the purpose and the potential of young people to providing them access to relevant training and education programs, as well as encouraging them around entrepreneurship and giving them the opportunities to actually apply some of these skills in entrepreneurial thinking in solving some of the biggest social challenges in their communities. That's a little bit about me.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine. I work alongside Marlon Parker, Christine Teifel to be exact. I am the project manager at the Youth Cafe. So I work with youth between the ages of 18 and 35 specifically. And what we do is we touch training development, but not only on technology, but we do personal development, digital and entrepreneurship for these young people.
Great. Honorable Coach? Is he on mute? He's on mute. We can't hear you. Hold on one second. You're mute. You seem to be muted. No.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yes.
Great.
Oh my goodness. So so my name is Ken Okoth. I'm member of parliament for Kibra constituency in Nairobi, Kenya. I am focused on as a member of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association on strategies that bring in young people to get business access and employment opportunities, to put in legal frameworks and policy frameworks that help the young people to, take full advantage of the economy and empower themselves.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm very excited and pleased to be joining all of you to moderate this session. I also spent 5 years conducting research and working with young people in grassroots youth groups in Nairobi. And so the work each of you are doing aligns very much with my personal passions and interests. Let's start today with a discussion about the way that you all came to be participating as change makers with young people in Africa. One thing that unites all of you is that you work with what are sometimes invisible or marginal communities. These are young people who work in the shadows. Their governments sometimes alienate them. Policies sometimes treat them as statistics rather than as people. Systems, especially education and others, let them down. Can you each give an example, and we'll start with Honorable Okoth, of how you effectively engage young people in these kinds of communities to be able to create meaningful economic livelihoods?
So I think the experience that I want to share goes even just beyond a community like Kibera, which is a poor urban slum, but in general. Recently, the members of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, in partnership with an organization called Youth Agenda in Kenya, we put together just an afternoon workshop, like a 2-hour information session near the University of Nairobi, and we expected 200 students to show up, and 1,000 young people showed up. And we had to have serious crowd control issues and to calm down people to go away. But the purpose of the forum was to explain to them how they can do business with the government, because the government of Kenya is the biggest business partner and consumer. And if young people can get access to supplying things, to doing business and trade with the government, they get access to a huge part of the economy. So we have programs that require 30% of all government tenders and government business opportunities to be given to young people in Kenya. So you can imagine young people from the slums of Kibera. Young people are hungry for these opportunities, but people from places like Kibera are even at a further disadvantage because the process of registration for the companies, their fear and access and intimidation against government offices to actually go register companies and get the required pre-qualification documents is often not an easy thing. So we're working very hard to tell them, this is true. Don't just be skeptical. This is true. Give it a try. These are the steps, and we have to do some hand-holding to get more young people to believe they can register and get access to government financing and also get access to government business opportunities.
Okay, great. Can we hear from South Africa, the experience in South Africa?
So, I mean, our experience has really been on the civil society side. And one of the things that we believe and project that we've done was, most people believe that the young people that live in these marginalized communities or difficult conditions, they sometimes underestimate the potential that's in these young people. I always say that, who best understands poverty than someone who lives in poverty? Who best understands slums than someone who lives there? So what we do is we create environments where we actually develop what we believe are the problem experts, and they themselves, and enabling them with the skills as well as the partnerships like government private sector and enabling them to actually come up with solutions, ideas that can actually solve some of these big challenges. At the same time, we also believe it's a wonderful opportunity for young people to harness their skills, be it if they're learning digital technology skills or they're learning how it is to do customer service. If they can learn and apply those skills within their own communities, what a great way for them to get a stepping stone into getting. Because when they go for a job interview, it's completely different now when they say, you know what, I've left school, but for the last 6 to 12 months, these are the kind of concrete things I've done in my community, and these are the actions that I've taken. So that's one of the kind of the big things for us, creating these enabling and empowering environments within these communities, empowering the young people there as well.
Regina?
Yes. So in the slum community that we work in, that's where our biggest project is, the biggest group. The challenge there is early child marriage. So for the girls, by 12 years old, they'll be married. And the reason that happens is largely because of poverty and because the community and their parents don't see the value in educating your girl child. So they think there's more value in educating the boys. And once we started the program, not only have we been able to demonstrate that there's so much potential in reaching out to young girls, but also we've been able to show that there is so much value in getting the girls to learn these digital technologies, not as consumers, but as creators. So you have young girls, you know, creating websites and building mobile applications. And in Ghana, there's 100% plus mobile penetration. So like everybody has a mobile phone. So this is a tool where the girls can, you know, use to really bring impact. And the interesting thing about the girls is that they think about community and family. So as they're being empowered, they're always talking about how they can improve their families and their communities, which I find very interesting. So giving them this skill allows them, you know, to not just impact themselves, but their families and their communities. And we're excited at the products that they're building.
Great. One thing that, you know, as you say this, you're talking about young people feeling empowered. But you yourself, as somebody who's engaging young people, had to feel empowered as well. Can you talk a little bit about your trajectory towards doing this kind of work? What you yourself experienced as a young person that gave you the power to then spread this change making to others? Marlon or Christine? Christine.
Okay. Pretty simple, in a sense where I, as a young lady, or like my background, I was always told, we come out of a community or our culture, they would tell us that we can't, right? Or especially as a woman, and with my underprivileged background and all of that, I was always told that, you know, you can't obtain a degree, or who are you to, you know, those kind of things. So because I was always told that I can't, that kind of motivated me to do the work that I'm doing. So I thrive on the challenges of life because I think that, like, it's.
I mean, I'll come in there with Christine. I think the main thing about it is, you know, sometimes it's your kind of these challenges that you face that kind of defines you, that kind of drives you. I'm sure the Honorable Kenneth, as well as Regina, can talk about that. Many times it's these kind of challenges that build your character. It's the same thing. We know every single thing that kind of pulls you back is purely, I mean, if you think of a catapult, you know, it pulls you back purely to kind of catapult you forward. And for me, I think that for many people, that is a key element in the work that we do. And Christine, I was fortunate enough to work with her and to see her growth and the impact she's making. And I think it's really kind of that, allowing those kind of moments that you've experienced and saying, you know what, life is more than just about me accelerating forward. It's also about the people I can take with me.
Beautiful. Do you... Honorable Koth, do you feel like you had that moment where you were pulled back so that you could go forward?
I think part of it, if you talk about young people, especially in the slums and areas like that, it's the challenge with education. Actually, when the young people are very hungry to get their education and it's expensive or out of reach for them. I wanted to go to the University of Nairobi, and for 2 years, I couldn't go because of financial reasons. My family couldn't afford it. So I did jobs working security. I did jobs delivering newspapers, and had to really just develop some confidence there and determination that things would work out before I got a chance to go to university and a scholarship. But for 2 years I was out. A lot of young people give up in that time period, or even give up before that when they can't afford high school. So before we even get to fully addressing unemployability, and we have to talk about even just access to a basic education, finishing up to class 12. From 4. That's a really important piece that we can't ignore.
And so that motivated you to really focus on education because you recognized the significance for your own life.
Education made a huge difference for me, and it's something that I prioritize. I think not just myself, but a group of young members in the parliament in Kenya to make sure that we're pushing for more funding in education, easier access of funding in every constituency to help members of parliament pay for students in their constituencies to go to school, but also for younger people who finished high school to get money to go to college to do technical skills, whether it's driving, whether it's hairdressing, to get a driver's license, to get a certificate as a hairdresser, to get a certificate in electrical, some basic things, even to get money to go and do some programming courses or learn some computer skills. All of those things are important, and it can be as little as $150, $500. But if the young people don't have that access and the government doesn't fund it well, they can be trapped by the poverty of their own parents, and then you end up with generations of hopeless people. But that's very dangerous for society.
Regina, you had there's an echo. You had a very you went to Shehi University, is that correct?
Yeah, I went to Ashesi University.
Ashesi, can you explain how that education, that unique education experience, and maybe a little bit about the university, pointed you in this direction? Or is there something even earlier? I'm sure there was.
Well, I mean, like Christina and Marlon said, being young in Africa, especially like Christina said, being female, there are several hurdles. So I'm not even going to go back there because they've said it all. I'm just going to continue from Ashesi. So Ashesi is the first liberal arts university education in Accra, Ghana. And at the time that it started, I was actually torn between staying in Ghana and getting my education in Ghana and then leaving and going to the US because I wanted quality education. But the problem was that there was something going on at the time called the brain drain, where you had the best and the brightest young Ghanaians leaving to go and study in the US, and they weren't coming back. And I was afraid of becoming one of that statistic, so I really wanted to study in Ghana, but the curricula for most of the universities were sort of outdated, especially when it came to technology. So they were learning programming languages that had been used a very long time ago. They were not like really up to date with the current trends. And then Ashesi came. So Ashesi was really like a saving grace because going through the 4-year Ashesi education taught me how to think critically and how to problem solve. So we were taught not to just take things on face value, to ask questions. And Ashesi teaches you about ethics and leadership, which is very important because one of the things that we lack here is ethical leadership. So you do have leaders, but as to whether they're ethical, that's a different, discussion. So Ashesi really, and also sort of allows you to think about the community. So it really started with Ashesi because I always said I never saw myself as an entrepreneur because that's not how I was programmed. I was programmed to get a job and marry and all that. But through the training that I had at Ashesi, I started to think about it doesn't just have to be about me developing myself, but how do I bring others along?
Great. Oh, we just lost your video feed. Oh, she's gone. Okay, well, we're going to try to get Regina back. let's move on. Actually, talking about education is one of those pieces of the systemic problems of where collaboration between governments and private sectors and citizen sectors and the like are not connecting. We've asked for some questions on Twitter. If you guys have any questions for Twitter, we would love to take them and ask our panelists directly as well. Okay, so let's move on to some of the systemic issues that plague the youth employment field in Africa. We've seen that a lot of young people just can't access good, stable, or meaningful jobs, and I think that's like a key thing that's emerging from some of the work that we're doing on innovations and employment, is that not only do we want people to be stable and economically, but we'd like them to feel like there's some kind of passion or meaning behind what they're doing. And it sort of seems that a lot of people are following this as well. Part of this is a systemic failure of education systems or a lack of private sector investment. Some also has to do with many institutions tackling the problem without effective collective efforts. When we asked people who is responsible for ensuring that youth are leading productive lives, there was a resounding response that all sectors of society must create enabling environments, and they need to be doing it together. Marlon, can you give an example of a systemic problem in the communities where you work that prevents collaboration?
I mean, I fully agree, excuse me, that one of the big challenges is education. You know, the one reality that we face is, it's no wonder that on the continent, it's one of the biggest issues. Because the minute you unlock the opportunity in education, it will completely, I believe, shift the continent. And one of the kind of main challenges we find, especially around collaboration amongst various stakeholders, is, of course, for private sector, the one key thing for them is, listen, we need to see our kind of return on investment. You cannot build systemic change on corporate social responsibility. The reality for them is they want to see real returns. The only problem, though, is they don't see the value. I mean, I'm generalizing from a private sector perspective in our context. They don't always see the value in investing in people. And for me, that is where you get your greatest return on investment. On the government side, again, we find as much amounts of money going into education. I mean, South Africa is one of the largest spenders on the continent in education. Yet, we find ourselves lagging behind on the continent. We find ourselves in a bit of a mini crisis at the moment. And the one key thing is that yet many of these investments are not really reaching the people at a very grassroots level. Non-profits and NGOs at the same time, those that works in the civil society sector, somehow have come along, and I do believe that they have a bigger role to play. I mean, who best works with the people on a day-to-day basis than the non-profit? So it only makes sense that on the one hand you have your private sector that not only can invest when it comes to capital to try new models and new innovations, but at the same time they have the business acumen, they have the way of managing, you know, the way things can be, the managerial skill sets are phenomenal. All of those things can be a huge value to educational systems. At the same time, we have our civil society, our non-profits, who are doing amazing work in communities, who are the ones that are at the frontier of dealing with people and their challenges. So they should definitely be involved in it. And of course, we have our government that can create the amazing enabling environments as well as scale for us. So it just makes sense that although each one has got a specific role to play, I believe that we don't see often enough that they come together to see the great returns on that type of investment. Right. Because each one has got their own agendas, their own plans, and I'm just I'm really kind of very passionate about this. Because I mean, the education for all of us was very key in our growth and in our trajectory of life.
Yeah, exactly. Honorable Koth.
Yes.
Someone needs to mute. Okay. Honorable Koth. Okay. It's still bad. Well, I wanted to ask you
You
if
muted
you
me.
could describe, prior to going to Parliament, you were working basically in the civil society for a nonprofit, and you must have seen systemic issues that propelled you into Parliament or propelled you into wanting to move into government. Is there some example that you can give about why maybe a lack of collaboration or an issue that you saw pushed you in that direction?
Yes, actually, I think the first lack of collaboration was amongst the civil society actors themselves, the non-profits, the NGOs, the charities working in the education sector. Many of them are too small, and the efficiency and the effectiveness is, it's so tiny. And instead of collaborating, in a place like Kibra, you have over 1,000 NGOs. But many of them don't have the capacity and continuity. Some start and fail. Instead of cooperating and collaborating and sitting joint grants, they each view each other suspiciously. So I think even organizations competing for charity dollars and working on the same mission can start working together and say, what's the mission and how do we raise more money together to have a bigger impact? So that's one thing. Mm-hmm. The second part of it is I also just realized, for myself that on something like education that's a public good and job training and preparing young people for the employment market, the private sector can be an assisting role and the civil society can play an assisting role. They cannot be a substitute for the duty of government and duty of the state. It's a state that's supposed to make sure there's access to school and teachers and school equipment for everybody. And the private sector steps in where there are gaps. So I was realizing in a place like Kibera, actually, the private sector, the charities were trying to do as much, if not more, than the government, and they were failing because they're not properly equipped for it. And so I felt for myself, with an NGO, I could provide funding for young people, maybe 20, 30, 50 to go to high school every year. But if I got into the government, I could be in charge of making sure that we were helping maybe 1,500, 2,000 young people go to high school and to college every year. So it was a bigger platform and a bigger impact, but also about the policy, making sure that every year that I'm in the National Assembly, we're pushing for bigger budgets for education and that we're giving oversight to the organizations that are supposed to give young people money for college, that they are doing well and their processes are streamlined and getting access to that is easier. And we can see that even in the employability issues. What partnerships and what programs can the government do at a time? In the National Youth Service is one of the programs in Kenya that the government can do, and that can take up to 20,000 young people every year. So that's a huge thing in job preparedness, skills training, financial literacy, business planning and management. That's really important, but even practical skills from agribusiness to construction to electronics. So that's the type of thing we're thinking about. But I've also seen some collaborations starting to work in Kenya, which I think should be scaled up and encouraged. For instance, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, is working with the World Bank, and they've come out with a structured internship program. And the government of Kenya has also started an internship program in the education sector to get young graduates on a 2-year fellowship. They're paid a small stipend and they work almost like Teach for America or AmeriCorps. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to see good ideas, and I think if you have leaders exposed with ideas and models from other places, then they adapt them to make it work for the country in which they live. It can make a huge difference. But the biggest challenge is, even as we develop these good programs, many times you still find it helps the young people already in the middle class or who are already steps ahead, and the ones who are behind are left much further behind. So when we talk about National Youth Service in Kenya taking 20,000 young people from the whole country, in Kibra constituency it's less than 10. Yet we're a huge urban district with young people waiting for those opportunities, eager to take them up, and it's breaking the logjam and saying to the government, look, you must take 100, 200, 300, to really make a dent in our community. And, when you talk about the internships by the government for the Teacher Corps and for the Private Sector Alliance, again, those are small pilot programs that have started, maybe 200 people in each. But I think in my constituency, maybe you get only 1 or 2 people who have had access to it. So those are type of things. I hope later on we'll also get a chance to talk about the funds that are available for young people to actually engage with government in business and how they work and what potential they have, so we can exchange ideas. And I hear the feedback from Nigeria, from Ghana, and from South Africa. How do young people get into business with the government?
Oh, great. No, that's wonderful. I think we've lost Regina for now, so right now it's just going to be South Africa and Kenya. She's not responsive. But in terms of that connection of the scale, so you're really talking about the fact that the policy might be there, and maybe it's a good policy, and the project might be there, and it's a good pilot project, but we're having an issue of scale, so that 3 Kiberans barely scratches the surface when it comes to really reducing unemployment or poverty in those areas.
Absolutely.
Do you have an example, Christine or Marlon? Actually, Christine, I know that you're working with a private-public collaboration as well. Do you guys have an example of how you're trying to scale?
Yeah, so, I mean, the key thing about scaling, of course, is, and I mean, I want to be the first to say it, we do tend to do a lot of pilots. Sometimes I believe we have some pilot syndrome. And some of the things that we specifically have been focusing on when we think about scale is to try and scale those little pockets of excellence. And you don't have to kind of try and scale entire systems or be it new industries. If you can just kind of scale those little micro pockets of excellence and allow that to grow, that is some of the key things. And the work that Christine has been involved in, maybe Christine can talk a little bit about just the work at the Youth Cafe, and then I'll chat a little bit around how we've intended working in partnership with government as well as private sector. What are the kind of things that we are thinking about in scaling that particular pocket of excellence?
Okay, so I'll speak more on a personal experience basis. So what we do is we have our youth. Well, we have our youth very much involved in everything, because one of the main things that we've discovered is that these youth are yearning to be a part of making decisions, just to come across as not as a victim, but as a victor. So what we do is we would involve our youth in a sense of the programs that we do. We would have discussions on problems that occurs in their community, and we would actually challenge them to go out and to change these change small little things, whether it's people that is not able to write or read, or whether it's just cleaning their streets, whether it's just mentoring a young person. Those are the kind of things that we focus on, because we know that they are. I mentioned that they want to be seen as they don't want to be seen as victims, but as victors. So what we do is we encourage them, and that's why we even have mentorship programs as well. We encourage them to start with those little things, and we know that these things start at home. So that is that is our culture that we have at the Youth Cafe, or at least that we've created. So I know we've mentioned before, that's why most of our programs, we focus on, yes, on digital as well as entrepreneurial, but also on personal development specifically, to get down to those, to get them more secured themselves, but also as role models or ambassadors in their community.
Yeah. And just how we approach this. So once we created that small pocket of excellence, it was then that we actually then worked with government, saying, you know what, this is the pocket of excellence that we've created. And this is the value that is created. Is this something that you potentially would want to partner with? So it wasn't written as a proposal. We actually first did it, and using the results and the outcomes that we've achieved, as well as the impact, that became the basis for the conversation with government. And I must be honest, we were able to get them involved, very excited that we've managed to set up our first 2 physical spaces, and they are now rolling it out across the Western Cape region. And government is enabling us. Private sector then came along and said, wait a minute, this potentially could add value for us because we do need young people to come into, work of employment. The biggest challenge is that young people are not work ready when they leave school, or they don't have the right kind of skill sets. But now you have a group of young people that has been developed personally, they've developed skills, but more so they're actually positive citizens in their community. And with the support and the environment the government has now allowed us to do, private sector coming in and saying, listen, we're quite happy to partner with you and provide exits for these young people out through these cafes. So the one key thing I would like to encourage any change maker out there is first create those pockets of excellence. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Even if you can just be the social and the real change for a small community, small group of people, that would be enough. Think of it as your business card or as your brochure. That will get the right partners, be it government or private sector, to get involved with the work that you're doing.
What you seem to be talking about, Marlon, is that. Oh, Marlon, can you mute, please? What you seem to be talking about is that young people really are the ones creating the solutions, and you're then taking that to the government and saying, we've made young people who are able to come up with their own employment. They're able to come up with the jobs that they need that's right for the market, and the government is buying in rather than it being a top-down approach. Is that, do you think, like a piece of a key part of this?
I do believe the opportunity of doing it grassroots up is key, and then the top-down will always be there. We can't deny that. But the good thing about it is going to government is not going. I mean, we understand the government has a lot of programs, there's policies, they do all those kind of amazing internship programs and all of those things that they put in place. But the one thing a government can do, they need to. It's easier to scale something that works than scaling something that might be okay. And the best way to show something that works is to do it small, and create that as becoming. Let that become what I like calling your pocket of excellence. And the problem we have on the continent is we do a lot of pilots, loads of pilots. I mean, seriously, lots of pilots. But we are not allowing pockets of excellence to scale. And I think that is where private sector and government has a huge role to play. And it's the responsibilities of that collaboration that will allow these things to scale.
How do you ensure that you're getting listened to? I mean, how do you ensure that Honorable Okoth in Kenya, if there was someone like you in Kenya, that he can speak to him, that you get the respect or the visibility that you need to show that your pocket of excellence is the thing that they should be investing in? Because they have a lot of different things that they could invest in, a lot of different people giving them opportunities or ideas. How do we make sure the right ideas get implemented? I'm sure this is a question Honorable Okoth also would like to know the answer to.
I was hoping that Honorable Kenwood was going to answer that for us. But
He's next.
He's next. Okay, so from my side, I'm a firm believer that if you are creating value, all right? If you create value, that somewhere along the line, someone will see the value. Someone will see the value, and resources and support will come. And so your impact, even if it's at a very small scale, and you've proven the model, you've proven that you understand the context, you understand the problem, as well as you can show the impact, there will be someone that will come along and say, you know what, how can we actually partner with you? The biggest challenge, of course, is always approaching and saying, come and give me, give me. Sometimes we are quick to capture value before we create value. And what I'm trying to say is we have to learn the balance, create value, and then you capture value with that. And capturing value is where you can access support from, be it government. I mean, it took us 3 years before any type of support came to our labs as an organization. But the one thing we did, we were relentless in creating value and impact in the small community that we work in. So that is always a good place to start.
Honorable Koth, do you have people like Marlon that you're listening to as you plan and design programs for young people? And how are you planning to incorporate more like him?
I think again, you know, when I go back to this, I like the way he said, when do you capture value and you claim value? You know, how do you stay determined even if you don't get the support initially? That is a good approach. I think for us in Kenya, and the experience I have as a member of parliament is we network with a group of, we call them a reference group. It's like an advisory board. Different youth organizations that serve different youth. So they come to us and tell us the youth they serve, what are their priorities, how are we doing. They are also our evaluation mechanism for our strategic plan and the goals we've set up. And so we, you know, they come back and tell us, you know, you said you'd put in a law and regulations to make it easy for young people to get one license, and that allows them to get any government tender they're qualified for. How far have you gone with those rules? Are you monitoring how many government agencies are actually giving those loans and businesses to young people? It's very important for somebody independent that cares about the same thing to tell it to you from their perspective. So you're not self-evaluating, but actually you're being evaluated by people who represent and work with the people you claim you're working. That's really important. So there's a formal group we work with that. For myself as Member of Parliament in Kibra constituency, as I said, it's for me a 1.5 years. Sometimes just because someone is in a leadership position doesn't mean they have all the answers and the solution. So listening and having a network of people you can talk to who can come to you with ideas is very important. You'll see one of the chat questions that I was asked was, what are my plans for creating employment for youth with disability, for people with disability? I don't have a good answer. You know, I would love to hear from that person a suggestion. Mr. Okoth, I suggest you do this for the young people in Kibra, and this is what makes sense. I might have an intuition, but it's not scientifically proven to be the best policy or worth investing in. And so if I listen to ideas from other people and they bring suggestions and solutions, it's very important. So I think that's why I'd say that. I don't know if I've answered the question properly.
You know, I think that there's also from my own experience of working with marginal populations, there's also an experience that you're inaccessible, that you're somebody that's difficult to access. Not you exactly because you weren't there, but that government is inaccessible, and that even private sector is inaccessible. And so a lot of young people, like we were talking about earlier, are in this very creative period of their life when they're young, and they have lots of ideas, but because they don't have the access to the right kinds of the people that can make something happen, that can invest, that can see their value, there does seem to be a disconnect. So what's my question? I suppose I'm wondering how you're making yourself accessible,
okay,
and encouraging young people to feel like they have the power to come to you with an idea.
I think one of the ways we can do that, as I respond to that set of issues you raise, is especially in marginalized areas where there's young youth in urban poverty, in places like Kibera, one of the key things is to engage them through schools. Going to the schools, making sure there's a social entrepreneurship club, there's a business club, there's a scouting movement, there's an agriculture club, those types of things where the young people are not just doing academic knowledge, but they're starting to build their skill set and social skills and abilities and resilience and teamwork and innovativeness in a structured manner over a couple of years, even as early as elementary school. You cannot start too early. I think by the 4th grade in primary school, children should be in some type of club, whether it's scouting or whatever, the types I've mentioned. But then you need to bring, leaders like myself and other elected leaders coming in to support them, business people, to create competition so they're engaging each other, but they're also engaging with mentors and role models who can come, even if it is once or twice a year, to a school, to a congress of students, and talk to them and do a panel and do a presentation and bring people they admire. The performing arts, entertainment, sports are huge in Africa. When you talk about employability, you want young people in Kibera to be able to make money out of being successful boxers, dancers, musicians, rappers, soccer players, basketballers. So that's how we want to invest in those things. And again, making myself accessible personally for myself as MPs. Every Monday that I'm in Nairobi, I sit in my office in Kibera and just have open office hours in the morning, and people can come in with their issues. What I find is actually that it's the older generation. I don't know how we break that attitude, but it's the older generation, mothers and fathers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who are more likely to come, and it's not the young people. The young people don't come as much, so maybe I need to think of another way of actually organizing their forums and going to meet them in places and spaces they're comfortable, rather than expecting them to come see me in my office. So there's a lot to think about, but I've done that observation, and it's mostly the older people who come, much less the younger people. So I have to rethink that and see, where do you go find the young people in places they hang out, around what discussions and forums, what language do you use when talking to young people? Yeah, so I think there is work to be done there, and it's good that we're reflecting on that, and I'm glad you asked me that question.
Good. Marlon, how are you empowering young people to feel like they can go to someone with some power to be able to affect change? One of the things, sorry, quickly before you answer, one of the things that Honorable Okoth mentioned was that young people need to get involved much earlier in life. And so we have found at Ashoka that if we encourage children in primary school through a network of changemaker schools to learn empathy at a younger age, that empathy leads to change making, and then they spend their entire life participating as active change makers in their communities. What are you doing specifically to ensure that young people feel like they have the power to go and affect change at much wider national or community-wide scales?
I mean, for us, it's really, when someone believes in you, and you have people that are willing to give you that opportunity. We ought to always talk about that opportunity for change. I always tell people that the truth of the matter is we do not have enough jobs on the continent. That is why we have such a lot of unemployment. So the problem is everybody is focusing and looking for jobs. And you ask young people, what job do you want? No, they said, oh, I want any job. And there's no job called any job. The challenge is that although we have a shortage of jobs on this continent, there is no shortage of work that can be done. There's lots of work to do. If you look in the slums, in Kibera, in our communities, there are work that needs to be done. The only problem is we've become so accustomed using the word job. So when we can allow young people to see that you can actually do the work in your community, even if you just go and help the elderly person over the road, and you become the best person that helped the elderly over the road, that is what you do. That is creating value. And the more we can get young people's focus, because unfortunately, in our educational systems, and I won't become philosophical about that, we see that we are always told that we have to meet a certain criteria before we succeed. And the truth of the matter is, that the best learning happens when you fail. You started walking, before you started walking, you were falling. So if we can get young people to focus on the work that is tangible, that they can do, that they don't have to wait for a big NGO or government or private sector or even their school to tell them, that they start doing these small things, that will get them into what I would like to believe is kind of like a change-making culture. And it can start small. Look for the things you can do in your family. Look for the things you can do for your neighbor. But we have to create the opportunities for these young people to do it. And it does come by making them understand you don't have to change a billion, you know, you don't have to, if you want to change the world, it doesn't have to be a billion people. You start changing the world by changing one person's world. That's what you do. And if you can do that good enough, you then say, okay, let me go on to the next one. And I think that is the culture that we really have to create.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just to tie into one of the other questions that was asked on Twitter about this thing about how do we get government to notice us? You know, you do need connections, you need to know people. The big thing is try and not be the one that is looking for people. Try and become the one that others are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I want to encourage a lot of our young social entrepreneurs. Become the person that others are seeking. And you only do that by being a change maker.
Great. I fully agree with that. We have 10 minutes left, and I think Regina, she came in and out, but I think we've lost her. So I'm wondering if our team in South Africa and Honorable Okoth would like to ask each other a question. Is there something that you think, you know, that you might want to know or have advice or seek from each other? Honorable Okoth?
I would like to ask the team in South Africa how, you know, beyond, you know, the work that can be done where you live, young people in business, how do young people from a place like the poor slums or so of Johannesburg or Cape Town or any major city, how do they get money to start businesses? How do they get training to be ready to be business people, to be entrepreneurs, not just social entrepreneurs, but any type of business? Because if you wait for formal employment, it may not be there. But if you want to start a small business, whether it's a software business, whether it is a video recording business, whether it's a cafe, whether it's a supply business delivering bananas, whatever it is, how do they get money to that? And what policies are there in your country that work, or would you like to see improved and that we can borrow maybe in Kenya?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that we've done at our lab specifically, it started in Cape Town, but we've now kind of expanded into a number of other countries. Most of our areas are kind of rural towns or urban or peri-urban areas. So that's where we've had a kind of a predominant and big focus. And some of the policies that we have and around access to funding, the truth of the matter is funding is still very difficult to access. Government do have some kind of support schemes where young people can get business plans and all of those kind of things. But the core focus of our lab has really been around developing and enabling young people, giving them that kind of tenacity to know that they can actually do this. They can actually start a business. If it doesn't work, it's okay. You get up again and you start all over again. And we always encourage them to start with what you have. You never will realize the value, because it's easy to say, hey, I would love to open a restaurant, which is good. But if you don't have money to set up the capital for a restaurant, why don't you start by cooking some stuff at home and start selling to your neighbors and let they become your first customers? We always encourage them, start with what you have, and if you show that you've created some value, use your basis again to go and access support. So government have got also got a little where they provide the security for young people to access funds from banks. But truth be told, it's not done at such a mass or tremendous scale in South Africa. I would love to learn the way you've done it as well. And especially, it's also not reaching the poorest of the poor. It's not reaching the people that we know can have so much potential and can achieve so much. So I do believe that is where private sector collaboration and civil society has a big role to play. They should be the ones that should actually access the funds from government and become the channels without taking too much administration costs to enable people within the supply chains, you know, because it will only draw value anyway for the for-profit companies and the non-profits. The biggest challenge they have and why collaboration is difficult for them is because they always go and chase the same purse of money. So now they have an opportunity to create value in partnership with private sector that will assist them in sustaining themselves. But my quick answer for this is always, young people should learn to start with what they have. If all they have is themselves and their family, then maybe they should say, what can I do with what I have to create value and generate an income? And from there you start building yourself towards your business.
So is your question for Honorable that you'd like to know his experience in Kenya?
Yes, that is what I would like to know. But also, how can we start taking some of his learnings into some of the other areas where we are?
I think that learning is the biggest part. Being open to learning is a huge thing. For instance, just having this conversation, I'm realizing how South Africa may already have a lot of solutions that we can borrow in Kenya, and I just don't know. I need to travel and go meet you guys and spend some days with you and really meet the young people you work with. That's really important. And I think, you know, you've been to Kibera, but if you want to come again and see and spend more time and see what am I doing as a member of parliament, what access are we doing as a government in Kenya. I'm in the minority party, but there's a lot of initiatives that are officially government policy that I'm involved with and understand, that we can say, okay, how do you lobby your leaders to borrow some of these good ideas to implement there? But I also want to see from the grassroots up the type of change making and success you've had that we can use to empower young people to break their own attitudes of disbelief and lack of confidence, to just say, hey, I don't need a degree to make a productive life as an adult, and what training and what engagement can we do, even if you don't have a degree, even if you don't have a big business capital plan? How do you start doing something without waiting for a job?
Great, wonderful. Wow. Well, I think that was a very. I think that we got to what we wanted, which was to talk about real solutions and to talk about real collaboration. And if you don't, maybe you have one final thing to say, and then our hour is over. Marlon? Please remute it.
Christine, do you have something final to say?
Thank you very much for the very informative session, indeed. Yes, we're looking forward to having all of you in South Africa. Yes, Marlon?
Yes, I think just to encourage a lot of the change makers to keep on persevering, to not give up, and always to remember that whatever they are doing right now and the change they are making right now has the opportunity to echo into eternity. And for us, that is what it's about. We will continue with them on Twitter. If there's anything that we can do to be of assistance or support, we would gladly do whatever we can to assist you. And thank you as well.
Honorable Ko?
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, the team from South Africa. I'm sorry we lost Regina from Ghana. I would say Africa, our biggest resource is our human resource potential. We have to invest and invest properly in our young people so that we can harvest fully the fruit of that demographic dividend. If we do not invest in our young people, if we do not empower them, if we don't make them self-sufficient in running their own small businesses, in creating employment amongst each other and in their own communities, and then trading within the continent, moving with their skills and labor and their products and goods across borders, then we will fail to use that asset, which is bigger than, you know, gold or oil or petroleum or any of the other natural assets. It is our human-based asset, and if we don't manage it and marshal it properly, we're going to lose. We're going to end up with instability, disease, conflict, unemployed youth. That's a recipe for a lot of problems, including even terrorism and radicalization. So I think we must be very careful and engaged, and I think this discussion amongst all partners, citizens, government, private actors, we need to work together to collaborate to solve it. It's not beyond us. It's a huge challenge, but we must do our best to fix it.
I just wanted to thank these wonderful panelists for taking the time to join us today and share their insights to continue solving youth unemployment. Please continue to engage on Twitter using the Africa Youth Forward hashtags, and be sure to follow our panelists. Also, don't forget, we just launched the Youth Innovations for Employment in Africa Challenge. You can find it on our website, www.changemakers.com/futureforward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay.